Till today, I'm hauntingly questioned about my fascination with poetry and computers, with English and science. How can I be interested in pursuing two completely different and diverse subjects? Poetry is art, literature, and ancient and aesthetic. It has no practical functionality. And computers, especially code, is technical, modern, and functional. It has no aesthetic or artistic value whatsoever, right? Poetry is made up of metaphors, which are meant for human meaning, but computer is made up of codes and commands, which is meant for a gray metallic machine to execute. Flustered, exhausted, and stuck in this weird identity crisis, I began searching for similarities, some kind of a bridge that I could walk on and be a part of both. What followed was one of the greatest things that I've ever discovered. Programmers writing poetry in JavaScript and source code. This is an entirely new form of literature, an amalgamation of classical poetry and computer code. It can be read by machines or humans or even both. It is interactive and static. It can be run by a computer to produce a visual and an auditory output that can depict the imagery involved in the poem itself. This is one of the examples of a code poem that can be readable by humans. Here, the natural language is easy to follow. Structure, brevity, and order is really important to create a computer program or a poetic effect. Code embraces the constraints of its form to create a meaning that is both purposeful and concise. Good programmer knows how to indent the lines in code to show a hierarchical relation between the line that precedes and follows it. Similarly, in poetry, a poet knows how to use indentations and line breaks to control the flow of the poem. Italics are also used for special emphasis. So as your eye passes over them, the italicized words get a special meaning, similar to the parenthesis in code. Both code and poetry have a similar effect. Each function, each coding phrase, and each metaphor or literary device infuses with the words around it to create a meaning. Each line juxtaposes with the next and is able to do something that neither can do on its own. In this example that I found online in a code poetry project by Daniel Holden and Chris Kerr, I found a code poem that's readable by both humans and machines. In the last two lines of the poem, we can get a sense of the theme of the water that's there. External world reconstructed, continue on floods of water, and even by the placing of the punctuations. But when I run the program, this is what happens. The program is run to give an effect of rain. The wholesome effect, the effect in total, is greater than the sum of the code or the poetry itself. This is the effect that cannot be achieved alone by the code or the poetry. Going back, the etymology of the word poetry is derived from an ancient Greek word called poiesis, which means an activity in which a person brings into existence something that did not exist before. We can see how the meaning of the word poetry is derived from this, but the definition of the word code is also perfectly applicable here. Most technological innovations, like electronic devices, websites, or applications, are running on thousands of lines of code, created by programmers who are intensely creative. They combine art, functionality, creativity, and purpose to create these inventions, and these are the modern works of literature. Code and poetry both represent a fundamental human need to create and invent constantly and satisfy their emotional and technological needs. Thus, code, poetry, literature, computers, science, and English are all inextricably intertwined.